Ready Player One is directed by Steven Spielberg, and it stars Ty Sheridan in a futuristic world set in 2045, where everyone is pretty much participating in this video game online virtual world called the Oasis. And after the creator of the Oasis passes away, he offers a challenge to the entire world to find one Easter egg within this virtual world, and the first person to find it gets complete control over the Oasis, which really means they get complete control over everything.
Yeah, biggest company ever. They basically run the world if they win.
Exactly, and more people participate in this than they do in the real world itself. So let's talk about Steven Spielberg. It was kind of a big announcement that he was the one to helm this movie, because it is a humongous movie and a very nostalgic book. How do you think he handled it?
I think he handled it well. Walking into this, I won't lie. When I read this book, there were a handful of directors in my head, like, who could make this. And Spielberg was on the list, but he was towards the bottom of the list, just because it's been a while since Spielberg, like, really wowed me with anything. He's consistently good.
Yeah.
He hasn't made a bad movie in a while, but it's just, there are times where I feel like he plays it too safe. And there's a little bit of that in this movie.
Yeah.
But overall, I do think that, I can't say I was wowed by him, but I was pleasantly surprised at how much I enjoyed this movie.
Yeah, I think that Spielberg was a wise choice for this. I'm watching this after seeing the post, you know, I mean, Spielberg is 72 years old. And when I watched this, I was like, this still looks fresh and young to me. It looks like he's having fun with this movie for the first time as an adventure movie in a long time, you know?
Yeah.
He really seems like he was honing in, he wasn't phoning anything in. He was really, like, there, present for all the decisions made. And for me, there was certain scenes that I was wowed. I was, like, big grin on my face, like, yes, Spielberg, you're doing it, man. You're doing what I wanted you to do.
Yeah, we are living in this age where we're getting constant remakes, reboots, video game adaptations, children's shows adaptations. We are living in this just like nostalgia boom. Mm-hmm. And I think this is like the big bomb of nostalgia. And I'm curious to see where the nostalgia factor goes after this movie. Like, are studios going to lean heavy on it, or heavier, I should say, on it, or are they going to kind of divert away from it? Like, all right, Ready Player One was kind of like the magnum opus of all this nostalgia era that we're in.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering where they're going to go from there. But as far as the IP using it, yeah, there is great nostalgia. I mean, there's superheroes I love, there's video game characters I love, old movie references, all this stuff that I loved and, you know, just really appreciate. And to me, yes, it was very pleasing to the eye. I also had, an ear-to-ear grin.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that might alienate some of the audience, because I think if you're like that target demo that they love, 18 to 49, that's who this movie's made for.
Definitely, yeah. And it is, I mean, I wouldn't say it's like incredibly adult, but it still like rides that PG-13 line quite a bit at certain times. But for me, yeah, I mean, this nostalgia, I agree. We're right in that sweet spot of like, this is eye candy for us, big time. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking like, when I buy this movie, it'll be like, you can do frame by frame, and you can just catch so many Easter eggs. Actually, there's so many Easter eggs in this movie about an Easter egg, and I think that they handled it well. They do interject a lot more modern nostalgia than the book does. The book leans heavily on early 80s, while this has things from now and the 90s and on, you know. So I think that they had to adapt a little bit from the book for that. So let's talk about the adaptation of the book. You and I both read it.
Yes.
Do you think they stayed true?
I'm trying to judge this as a movie and not as a book adaptation.
Yeah.
But the changes that they made from the book, I didn't exactly mind that they changed things from the book just because this is a different medium. But there are changes from the book that kind of made this just like a more conventional, traditional story. And I complained with Spielberg's last movie, The Post, that he played it too safe.
Yeah.
And I feel like when it came to the story changes, he kind of played it too safe with, like, you know, having the romance kind of like throughout the movie, having this kind of revolutionary kind of resistance thing. It just felt beat by beat, standard, kind of generic.
I think they made the right choices for this to be a streamlined 2-hour, 20-minute movie to make sense, but there are certain choices that I think they could have left in and left out certain things from the movie. You know what I mean? Like, sort of, we're not going to go into spoilers, so we can't really get into heavy details, but there's parts of what I agree with you, but I think at the same time, they made the choices they needed to make for this to work.
And no, I completely understand that they had to change it up because this is such a dense book. Yeah. And there were characters cut out of the book that weren't in the movie. There were characters made just for the movie in this. But I feel like it went too by the numbers. Yeah. So, like, if someone going in who hasn't read the book, they might get a feeling that's just kind of generic, you know, just kind of beat by beat, traditional kind of storytelling.
Yeah.
And so that's really the like the only big fault that I have against this movie, because this movie is entertaining.
Yeah.
The characters are great. They did a great job with casting. The dialogue's fun and funny too.
I want to talk about the dialogue. Just
go ahead.
Yeah, briefly, is what I really loved about this, and I think it might be Spielberg, and I think it's also because the writer of the book adapted the screenplay.
Ernest Cline.
Yeah, as well. But yes, when the villains are doing this talk, it could be this generic, like, spouting off what their plan is, but no, it's funny. It's really funny through the whole thing. Every scene takes the opportunity to be entertaining and not just be exposition, and I respect that about this movie.
I will say this is one of the more inconsistent action movies, as far as just as the action.
Okay.
Because the car race scene, that was great. My mind was blown. I was smiling and just enjoying it right there for the ride. But I feel like during the combat scenes, they just weren't fluid enough for me. They were a little choppy at parts.
Okay.
Not during the entire combat scene, but there were parts where I'm just like, okay, this is completely CGI.
Yeah.
Why are you making it look like choppy? Like, oh, these actors aren't martial artists. We need to cut and just, make it like that. And like, no, it's a CGI rendering. Why can't you make it more fluid?
I do want to praise the race scene of being one of the more exhilarating scenes I've seen in a very long time.
Yeah.
Especially after seeing more recent action movies like Tomb Raider or anything like that. Like, this is something else.
Yeah.
And I encourage you to see it on the big screen. I would say that in comparison, it's a little choppy and not quite as well done. But for me, it was more of a feast of the eyes in the Oasis when it wasn't the action. The action took the back seat almost to more of the calming times where you just get to scan the screen of what's going on. So I agree with you. I think towards the climax scene, I didn't have any problem with it. I was a kid in the candy shop with that one. I was having a blast. But I know towards the middle of the movie there's some action that's just a little iffy.
Right. I mean, if the non-action scenes were a feast for the eyes, I feel like some of the action scenes were like overfeeding. Like, there's so much they're just throwing at you where I'm just like, all right, guys, my eyes and brain can only handle so much
right.
at any given moment.
One issue that I have with the movie, and it is a small issue, and that is a little bit of a pacing towards the second, third act transition. You spend a lot of time in Oasis in this movie, more than the book. I think that in the book there's a lot of downtime outside of the Oasis, a little bit more character building, a little bit more where, I'm not going to, again, go into spoilers. But with this, I felt like there was just a little bit of a lull again, where it just, there's a little bit of a downfall, you go out of the Oasis, and it just sort of slows down for me a little bit, and then it picks right back up.
Yeah, they are in the Oasis a little bit more than they are in the book, but I still wanted them to be in the Oasis more, because I feel like that's where
stay in the
wow factor really was, and I feel like some of the scenes that they had take place in the real world, they could have somehow made them in the Oasis.
Sure.
But at the same time, where the nostalgia factor, I said they lean a little too heavy. I feel like maybe if they did more scenes in the Oasis, that'd just be like, oh, we'll plug this in there, plug that in there,
more,
so at the same, it's one of those things where it's like, I might not like it, but I understand it.
One thing I found that they switched up a little bit more from the book to the movie was the character of Halliday. He's more of a character in this movie.
Yeah, he's more prominent.
Yeah, he's more prominent, and he also carries more of the emotional weight of this film's themes, which I really enjoyed. I thought that was a great deviation from the book to actually give him a little bit more. What do you think?
I like that they included him more, but I don't really like his character and his portrayal. It was just, like, I get it, he's supposed to be this, like, eccentric, multi-trillionaire in this case type, where he's, like, this genius inventor, introvert, but I just, like, they leaned really hard on it, and they went a little too extreme with it.
Yeah.
So I like that they included Halliday more in the movie than they did in the book, but what they did with the character and how they portrayed him, I can't say I really liked it.
Oh, I disagree. I really liked it. I thought that I liked the actor that played him. I was a little unsure when I saw him in the trailer. I'm like, this is weird. Like, it doesn't really seem like the Halliday that they portrayed in the book. But I thought he added the vulnerability of the film and really hammered home the themes of the movie, which was pretty blatant, but also very relatable for this modern time. But if there was any emotion that got out of me, it was from Halliday. It wasn't from the love story or anything like that, or even the speech or the war scene or anything like that. It was more of him and just being, an introvert. And I really like those themes that they explore, and I think they're pretty relatable nowadays.
Right, and you're right about the message being pretty obvious. Like, my two big complaints with this movie are my two big complaints with the post, that Spielberg played it safe, and there's no subtlety in the message. Like, yes, I do believe that video games are a fun escape from reality, but be in the real world, live in the real world. I do believe that, but this movie just kind of like hammers you over the head with it to the point where it's like, I get it, dude.
Yeah.
I get it.
All the while just making me want to play video games.
True.
So it's a little bit of a buffs. All right, we've been waiting a long time for Ready Player One. Let's put a score to it. What do you think?
I think Spielberg did a great job with this one. There were some complaints I had, but overall, I can't deny how much I was entertained and how, even though I knew this story beat for beat because I read the book, I was still wowed at some parts. So I'm going to give Ready Player One an 8 out of 10.
Okay. Yeah, I was wowed a lot in this film. There is a certain scene that we did not talk about because of spoilers, but that was awesome. There's a scene that is absolutely amazing. And this met my expectations and maybe slightly even exceeded them a little bit. So I'm going to go a little bit higher at an 8.5. I really, really enjoyed Ready Player One. It's highly recommended.
Buffs.
So that's our review of Ready Player One. Are you planning on seeing the movie? What do you think? What do you think of Spielberg? Leave all your comments down below.
Join us next week when we review A Quiet Place, the new thriller written and directed and starring John Krasinski. It looks pretty interesting. I'm kind of pumped for this one.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll give you that review next week. No matter where you are, what you're doing, please
Watch more movies.